light on this, but apparently a lot of you guys seem to think that CC Goku from the Dragon Ball series is now canon.
So it seems like there's this trend on TikTok where if you say the dumbest, most brain rot things, you get the best engagement. So I can see why he's getting a lot of engagement on his videos because he says a lot of nonsense.
But the key takeaway from that conversation is what Toyotaro had to say. And Toyotaro said, as I quote, "I love almost everything in the Dragon Ball universe. For me, everything is kind of canon because I've seen it all. But it's not my role to decide what's canon. I think it's better if each fan decides what is or isn't canon for themselves. For example, I used to play Dragon Ball Online, and that's canon to me too."
Toyotaro mentions the game Dragon Ball Online, which is a game created by Akira Toriyama, to which he states himself that it happens many years after the current manga. So it's definitely canon by default. So it makes sense contextually speaking, and I believe it's just more ontologically parsimonious that Toyotaro is referring to official Dragon Ball media. And this is corroborated by the statements that Toriyama made prior, where he says that he likes to see the Dragon Ball movie as occurring in a different dimension. He says GT is a side story, etc. So it's basically just reinstating what Toriyama has already established, that different Dragon Ball medias are just separate timelines or continuities that are connected in the broader Dragon Ball multiverse. When Toyotaro says that he's not the one who decides what is canon and the fans should choose what is canon for themselves, he's basically saying, what do you view as the main continuity? Because there's multiple other continuities, the movies, GT, etc. So whatever you view as the main continuity is canon to you. That is your continuity that you follow. That is your main continuity. Because technically there isn't any main continuity due to the fact that there's an infinite amount of timelines.
So even the current head of the Dragon Ball manga admits right there in that interview that CC Goku is not canon, and it is up to the fans to decide that, as he himself does not have the authority to determine what is canon.
So this is just a blatant straw man of Toyotaro, because not once in the scan did he ever say the CC Goku is not canon, nor did he imply that. It's also another straw man because Toyotaro quite literally never says that he doesn't have the authority to determine what is canon, right? He just says that he thinks it's better for the fans to determine what is canon for themselves. That's why he says it's not his role to decide what is canon, because he's allowing the fans to choose what continuity they choose as the main continuity. If Toyotaro were to come out with a statement, right, or an official guidebook or something stating that the Dragon Ball Super timeline is the main continuity and every other thing is just an alternate version of the Dragon Ball Super timeline, that is a perfect demonstration of him having the authority to determine what is canon. He can literally just make a new Dragon Ball manga chapter where, like, he disconnects the Dragon Ball Super timeline from every other continuity. He just says, oh, all the other timelines were erased or something like that, basically retconning all the separate, continuities and medias of Dragon Ball and stating that the Dragon Ball Super timeline is the only continuity, right? So yes, he can determine what is canon. He just doesn't choose to determine what is canon because he's allowing the fans the freedom to choose what continuity they see as the main continuity. So you having the conclusion that Toyotaro said the CC Goku is not canon simply because he said it's not his role to decide what is canon would just be a non sequitur from your end because it doesn't logically follow through.
Which then leaves you Dragon Ball fans with two options. Either A, everything in and related to Dragon Ball is now canon, which means that Jump Force is now canon and everything in that game is also canon.
So this is how you distinguish a pseudo-intellectual low tier from an actually competent person. He claims that Dragon Ball fans don't do research, but he does no research himself whatsoever. Because if he did do his research, he would realize that Jump Force is simply licensed to use Dragon Ball characters in their game to make money, and it's not connected to the Dragon Ball story in any way whatsoever, and it's completely distinct from something like GT or the movies, which are directly stated to be connected to the Dragon Ball story in different dimensions, which obviously implies different timelines, kind of like Trunks' timeline. So no, Jump Force is not canon, so I don't know why you're bringing it up. It's just licensed to use Dragon Ball characters. It's a crossover game, right?
Dragon Ball Evolution, which is one of the... A lot of you Dragon Ball fans like to cry and moan about CC Goku when regular Goku would definitely lose a fight. We find ourselves in these situations all the time.
CC Goku and Super Goku are the exact same person from the exact same timeline. If you disagree with this, we can just debate it. I'll debate anyone in any talk. Any one of you can come get destroyed on the topic. I literally don't give a fuck. We'll debate on Discord because I don't do TikTok lives, but I'll be streaming the debate live on my YouTube channel so we can get the recording from there, and we can also have, a wider audience that I can actually get supported from. But listen, Dragon Ball fans, You need to understand that as long as drip sauce exists, there is no Dragon Ball down player that will have a good night's rest. Because they are literally all trash debaters, bruh. They can't last 10 minutes in a ring against me. Like, all of them are literally scared of debating me because they know they would get bodied. The Dragon Ball downplay arguments are so bad. Goku is easily out of Ursula and above. Easily. Anyone who disagrees can come debate me. I have a Discord server. CC Goku is Super Goku. Xenoverse Goku is Super Goku. Kakarot Goku is Super Goku. They're all the same person from the exact same Dragon Ball Super canon timeline. There is no distinction. Goku is easily out of Ursula and above. If you disagree, come debate me. I promise you, I will bury you in the ground, bro. Dragon Ball on top. Like, literally. I defend Dragon Ball for a living. I literally defend Dragon Ball for a living. My YouTube channel literally got monetized because I defend Dragon Ball. So for me, it is that deep because defending Dragon Ball got me money that helped me a lot as a college student living in Nigeria. So I do not play with Dragon Ball at all. Dragon Ball on top.
I feel like for the longest time, we've just kind of accepted that Superman beats Goku.
Yeah, we're not about to do this Superman slams, and it isn't close.
I genuinely don't think you understand how busted Dragon Ball characters are, because if you did, you would not be saying shit like this. Superman does not do anything to Goku. He struggles to get past Universal, while you can easily get Goku above that even at a low ball from earlier sagas.
Because anything that Goku has done, Superman has done it on a way larger scale.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is just completely false. It's actually the exact opposite, because any feat Superman has done, Goku even before Dragon Ball Super has performed feats that makes that look like child's play.
But that's not really an argument, so let me grab some proof for that. Everybody knows Goku was able to affect the Universe 7 macrocosm, which is comprised of 4 separate spacetimes.
You see, this is the first mistake that people who don't know anything about Dragon Ball always make. They always say that the macrocosm is comprised of 4 different spacetimes, but that itself is contradictory because the otherworld is literally implied on multiple occasions to be non-spatial or non-temporal. Here in the anime, Supreme Kai says he's transported him to a planet in the physical plane, implying that the plane of existence that they're from was non-physical. This is in reference to the Kaioshin realm, which implies the Kaioshin realm is non-physical too. So again, you're wrong. Not 4 different spacetimes. It's also stated in Daizenshu that you can't access Otherworld with a physical body, and it's necessarily implied that you need a soul to access Otherworld, which would imply the Otherworld itself is non-physical. Like, this is just basic syllogism. Goku also verbatim states that there is no time in Otherworld, and before you butt about the translation, this is what it says in Japanese. It says, Jikan te mono ga aru kono yo. Jikan means time, and temono ga aru is a colloquial way in Japanese to express the form that there is such a thing or such a thing exists. So it's saying that in this world, there is a thing called time, right? Or such a thing like time exists, in contrast to the other world, which has no time. I don't think I need to explain why something that is stated to be non-physical and non-temporal would necessarily just be spaceless. But spatial axes are something that is necessarily physical in nature, so if something is non-physical in nature, it would just logically follow that it lacks spatial temporal axes, which is corroborated by the fact that it's stated to be non-temporal as well. I mean, if you look at the scan on the screen, it's just basic general relativity. Space and time are intertwined and one cannot exist without the other. So if you don't have time, then you can't have space and vice versa. So anything that is implied to be timeless or non-physical would necessarily be dimensionless in nature. So it can't be a space-time, right? So you're already wrong about 2 of the realms in the macrocosm, the Kaioshin realm and the afterlife. So it's not 4 different space-times. I mean, it's even stated in the super exciting guide that Otherworld lacks the concept of time, which would just imply that it lacks the concept of space as well, based on the priors we established. And before you run and say that the super exciting guide is not credible, it's literally the same guide that extrapolates on how Super Saiyan is a 50 times multiplier in Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 3, etc.
As well as an infinitely expanding universe. This would get Goku comfortably to the low multiversal or 4D range.
Beerus is stated to be a being who transcends all, to the point that when Goku achieves Super Saiyan God, which is able to rival Beerus, Goku states that it's like he's an entirely new world of power. It's even stated in a Chozenshu that the power of a god of destruction is above dimensionality itself, which Goku is able to rival in the Battle of Gods movie. This beyond dimensionality level power is more consistent because it's stated that Goku and Beerus' fight is super dimensional, which basically means beyond dimensions in certain contexts, which is contextually more sensible to assert because it's stated in the Daizenshu and the Chozenshu that Otherworld transcends dimensions that cannot be perceived, and Otherworld is a realm that they were affecting in their fight. Even in the official Spanish translation of the Chozenshu, they state that Otherworld transcends the dimensions of space and time, which is also consistent with the translation of the Daizenshu. Otherworld is also stated to be separated from reality, which is the living universe on the most metaphysical level, with metaphysical coming from metaphysics, which is in context to abstract concepts like space and time. Considering everything I just said about Otherworld lacking space-time on a conceptual level and transcending dimensions, in all that regard, Otherworld would just easily be Outerversal, and by extension, Goku for affecting Otherworld would scale to Outerversal as well, which is something Superman can never scale to because he has no feats on this level whatsoever. Like, he struggles to get past 4th dimensional. But let's see what he has to say for Superman.
Whereas Soup's fighting himself in the Infinite Crisis comic did this with infinite timelines by simply just punching his past counterpart.
Yeah, even if I grant all of that is true, that still wouldn't get Superman anywhere near Goku, since that would just cap it like Multiversal Plus, which is below even what Otherworld would scale to at a low ball, which is 5D.
Not to mention, Superman's villains are just stronger. You have Mr. Mixie-Piddleick, who's just a 5th dimensional imp.
I mean, Mr. Mixie might be a villain in DC, but that doesn't mean Superman beats him with brute strength or anything. Superman always resorts to outsmarting Mr. Mixie by making him say his name backwards. And even if we grant the fact that Superman somehow scales to Mr. Mixie, that would still only cap him at 5D, which is below what I have for Goku.
5th dimensional isn't literally just 5D. That's just a namesake in the DC multiverse, but I'm not going to get too far into that.
I'm not going to get too far into it either, but with the way it's described and the way it's depicted, yeah, the 5th dimension is literally 5D, 5 spatial temporal dimensions in DC. It's not anything else. And I don't give a fuck about any Scott Snyder statement outside of the source material, because that would just be death of the author, as it contradicts what's shown in the source material. The 5th dimension is always depicted as just being transcendent to the 3rd dimension, and the 3rd dimension appearing flat from the 5th dimension, which is how 5th dimensional entities are usually depicted in fiction. Not only that, but a 5th dimensional imp like Mixie verbatim states that most of her body is standing in a room in a mathematical higher dimension. There's multiple other pieces of evidence in DC that suggest that the 5th dimension is spatial, but as I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. The only piece of evidence that DC fans use to suggest that it's not in reference to actual spatial dimensions is the statements from Scott Snyder outside of the source material, but that would be like Kishimoto coming and saying that Naruto's hair is blue when it's actually yellow. I don't care what Kishimoto says outside of the source material. What I see in the source material is what I follow. That's why we don't take Koyama's statements of Otherworld having infinite hierarchies, because it's not supported anywhere in the source material. But if Koyama says that Otherworld transcends space and time, that is supported in the source material, so we can take that as valid. This is what we call death of the author. This is why we can't take Scott Snyder's statements as valid, because it contradicts what's actually shown in the source material. I don't care how recent he made his statements. He's not the sole author of DC.
Jordan was able to cross into a distanceless and timeless barrier in the Phantom Zone. Why does this apply to Superman? Superman was able to break out of the Phantom Zone. Him simply moving in that realm would grant him irrelevant speed. This is already more than enough to beat Goku.
This is yet another example of when comic fans don't even read their own shit. In the scan, it's literally contextualized that Superman uses a machine to send Green Lantern into the Phantom Zone. So this is not a speed feat. Not even close. The machine is what helps him to cross a distanceless, timeless barrier in an instant in order to get into the Phantom Zone. This is not a feat he could perform on his own, otherwise he would have done it without the machine. Read your own scan. And I don't know why you're lying about this scan. This is obviously not Superman punching through the Phantom Zone. This is Superboy Prime in the Infinite Crisis events punching a hole in space-time or reality. So I don't know why you think we don't read the comics either. Like, you think we're that stupid? Like, this is why I just dislike comic fans in general, because they're so disingenuous and dishonest with their scaling, bro. It's genuinely disgusting. Now I'm going to be applying the same line of speed scaling that you tried to apply to Superman but failed miserably, but instead I'm going to be doing it for Goku, and I'm going to be doing it correctly. Now in the anime, Goku and Jiren's speed is hyped up as being out of this dimension. In fact, in the raw Japanese, it literally says that their speed is super dimensional, or superior to this dimension. Now if you look at the descriptions for the world of Void, it's stated to be a place that is filled with infinite nothingness and without time and space. Even the raw kanjis for the world of Void describe it as being a dimensionless void. So using the same metric of scaling, Goku would also be a relevant speed. I don't even think this line of scaling is necessarily valid, especially when there's no further context given, as being dimensionless doesn't necessarily mean that you would be Outerversal or grant someone a relevant speed. There's a difference to lacking dimensions and lacking dimensions conceptually. What the Phantom Zone does is it lacks dimensions, which makes it 0D. So it's a zero-dimensional topological space, which is something within mathematics, right? It doesn't mean that it lacks dimensions on a conceptual level. So even if we grant that line of scaling, it still wouldn't grant Superman a relevant speed.
Let's move on to AP. The Phantom Zone exists in the Sphere of Gods. The Sphere of Gods is stated to transcend an innumerable amount of infinitely layered dimensions.
The first scan you sent only describes the God Sphere as being beyond space and time, and I don't think something being stated to be beyond space and time necessarily has to mean that it posits a dimensional transcendence, as it could just be talking about how it's a distant or separate realm. I'm gonna need you to justify why it would necessarily mean that it's a higher plane of existence. In the second scan that you sent, if you literally read the comic where it comes from, it contextualizes that dimensions are referring to universes and nothing more. So just because it says innumerable dimensions or parallel worlds and infinite dimensions doesn't now mean that it's referring to infinitely transcending layers of higher dimensions. It's just in context to universes. Parallel worlds and infinite dimensions is literally just affirming the quantity and the quality of the exact same thing. Why would it necessarily have to mean that it's referring to higher dimensions? There is no justification for this whatsoever within the comics at all. The third scan you sent does nothing at all either, as it just says worlds beyond worlds beyond worlds, okay? Why would that necessarily mean that it's positing in R over F transcendence? Like, why would it mean that it necessarily has to refer to higher planes of existence? If I say that my universe is beyond your universe, that doesn't now mean that my universe transcends yours, so it does nothing for you. It would just be more ontologically parsimonious that it's referring to how those universes or worlds are separate from each other, which is why they say they're beyond each other.
Getting the Sphere of Gods to low outer versal.
This would not get the God Sphere to low outer versal. Matter of fact, you didn't even scale the God Sphere to fourth dimensional. The only line of scaling you apply to the God Sphere is how the Phantom Zone exists within the God Sphere, which you contextualize as being zero dimensional. So, based on what you provided, the God Sphere is only zero dimensional. Yeah, this is just horrible. We can debate on this if you want. You can add my Discord, it's in my bio, and you can join my server. We can debate on stream, and we can have the whole thing, streamed and whatnot. Goku slams Superman in Soul's composite DC. It's not even relatively close whatsoever. Like, Superman would literally be a training partner for Pan. And always remember, I am here to defend Dragon Ball. As long as Drip Sauce is here, nobody's gonna be highballing other verses and downplaying Dragon Ball. I'm gonna let it slide. Hell the fuck no. If you like this type of content where someone just completely bullies a comic fan and completely rebunks Dragon Ball and debunks all the Dragon Ball downplays, make sure you're following me here on TikTok because we're already past 5K followers, and make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube as well so we can get to 10K subscribers pretty soon. So yeah, thank you for watching the video. Whoever watched it all the way, dubs, big W. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, you're probably gonna miss when I post my ultimate Dragon Ball video, which is gonna explain everything that is canon to Dragon Ball, why everything is canon. Xenoverse, Kakarot, Heroes, GT, and all the things, why they're all canon to Dragon Ball, why CC Goku, Xenoverse Goku, Kakarot Goku are all the same person, all the same version of Goku from the same super timeline, and I'm gonna be explaining the scaling of Dragon Ball all the way from OG Dragon Ball all the way up to Dragon Ball Heroes. I'm going to be scaling Goku above high outer. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Otherwise, you're going to miss it.